There are a whole bunch of unsung heroes in the history of innovation. Not everybody who changed our world got the publicity that a Thomas Edison or an Alexander Graham Bell did. Most inventors stayed virtually anonymous. They just kept their heads down and kept working, kept creating. And without this next person you'll see, you might not be watching me. Meet inventor Charles Francis Jenkins, who lived from 1867 to 1934. Charles Francis Jenkins was involved in many innovations, from film projection to television technology to transmitting of weather maps, and much more.
Charles Francis Jenkins had an amazing breadth of inventions under his belt. He had about 400 patents total during his lifetime, and those ranged from steam engine cars to milk cartons to televisions and radios that had the ability to receive images over radio waves, film projectors, you name it.
Kristen Galerno is the curator of communications and information technology at the Henry Ford Museum. Can we point to any one concrete innovation that we use today and say, that's due to Charles Francis Jenkins?
One important thing that he did is he, in his early career, developed this thing called a phantoscope, which was a way of projecting films onto the wall. And that innovation was actually sold to Thomas Edison. And so Thomas Edison's Vitascope projector was actually based out of Charles Jenkins' earlier work.
So he played an important, if not well-known, role in the development of motion pictures.
Yes, and from the history of motion pictures, we can actually make a jump in Jenkins' trajectory to the history of mechanical scanning television. And Jenkins had the very first television license in the US.
Another one of Jenkins' innovations had a highly practical value: transmitting of weather maps for sailors at sea. Jenkins worked for the early US Coast Guard and was concerned about safety. And in that interest, he created a more reliable way to transmit weather mapping data, which involved images rather than the previous method of Morse code. Movies, TV, weather, Jenkins did it all.
He was a polymath. He did a bit of everything.
He was a polymath, right?
Yes.
He could do like a multi-hyphenate, or as they say, right? He could do it all.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, innovation means trying and not succeeding. Jenkins experienced that too.
One of the things that he's perhaps not best known for, but it's a very quirky thing and more people should know about it, was that he used this radio as a surveillance device in 1924 to listen to the planet Mars.
Well, to listen to Mars?
To listen to Mars.
I didn't know that we'd ever made contact with Mars.
I don't think we still have. He was working with the military, and the military declared radio silence. And so they open-tuned the radio, and they received static. But they realized that all of this static was coming from things like passing trolley cars, and there's interference from other planets making their own sort of sounds in space.
Not Martian trolleys.
It wasn't Martians.
That's kind of a bummer. Ever notice how sometimes the most talented players advance the ball down the field, but don't necessarily score the goal? Or how there may be a lesser-known songwriter behind your favorite song? Well, maybe what matters most is the achievement, more than who ultimately gets the credit.